All right. So it's continuing. I composed myself a little bit as well. Um, but anybody that's grown up in the truth, and in the kingdom halls, and any of it, you know that there is kind of a hierarchy that goes on. There is kind of a clique that goes on. There is kind of a there's a vibe that goes. I can't really explain it, but I was an elder's kid, so the the kids from the weak families were considered not appropriate for us to associate with. Plus, they didn't want to associate with me anyway because I was the elder's kid. If they were doing something that was a little, fun, but not necessarily wrong, but not approved, um, they were worried that I would tell. And then the good kids after, and there weren't that many good kids. Most of the kids that were in good standing were a few years older than me, so I was they had no reason to want to hang out with me, kind of thing. So once I got announced, though, nobody was allowed to associate with me, and their parents kept them away from me, and my parents put the controls on because they were trying to, the way they say disfellowshipping is good for you because it's going to help you. Well, it was the same thing. They pulled in the reins and made my life absolute hell because it was good for me and it was going to help me. Well, when you're young and you're put in a box and you're not allowed to socialize with anyone, you're going to find somebody to socialize with. And that's what happened. And there's a guy, I can't remember his handle, and I can't really remember his video, but I remember him saying something about, seasonal friends. He had the friends of school, but it was only during the school year, and then summer was over, and then the next year it would start up again. And that's what happened to me. I turned to the kids at school, and being kind of an odd fellow, as by being a Jehovah's Witness, the pickings weren't that good. So I ended up, bonding with the other misfits that were out there. And of course that took, my life into the worldly behavior began. And that was where I stopped, sharing that I was a witness. I used to inform a witness at school all the time. And this is where this stopped. And it was started like, if somebody would ask me if I were a witness, I would be like, my parents are. I haven't decided yet. And it wasn't quite, no, I'm not, but it was like, my parents are. I'm not sure yet. My parents are. I'm still figuring it out. And my rebellion was really starting. And it was when I was about 16 years old. I had started smoking. I had started sneaking out. There were the big things that I never crossed the line for. I mean, I was not into the sex, drugs, or drinking, but I did start smoking. And I have to tell you, I started smoking more just to the rebellion thing. It wasn't, I just wanted to. I was just out to get my parents at this point. I just wanted to punish them for the pain I was going through. And so of course I got busted for the smoking. I got busted for sneaking out. I got um, busted, and then by then my attitude was really like, even though I did care, I had gotten that hard, crusty facade that I don't care, do your best, hit me with your best shot kind of attitude. I was hurt, and I was putting up the wall of protection, and it was a hodgepodge of weird emotions because I wanted to please them, but I wasn't gonna sacrifice myself. I was hurt and in a lot of pain, but I didn't want him to see that. And, there was just all this stuff going on. So on my second judicial committee, um, like I said, that one I earned, because by now I'm just, I'm basically giving them the finger without realizing I'm giving them the finger. And I don't really remember much of this judicial committee because I already knew. I mean, I was already public, in trouble. What more could they do to me, kind of thing was my attitude. And so I don't remember much of this other than, them and the authority figure. And I mentally was somewhere else. I was like, whatever. Just do it and get it over with, kind of thing. And this was the announcement where I was listed as bad association, have no contact with her, um, limited contact in the congregation. I can't remember exactly. Limited contact in the congregation and no contact outside the congregation. And I was, announced that I was bad association. If I would have been baptized, it would have been disfellowshipped for sure. And but by then, like I said, I really didn't care, and I had, new friends, new associates. They were little more than just associates, but they weren't really friends because I could only socialize with them, you know, uh, around school time. But I did have people to talk to at this point, and I ended up leaving the house when I was 17. I can't remember exactly what happened. I got home late from work or something like that, and walked into the house, and the elders were there. And I remember I didn't even do anything, kind of thing. There. If you would have caught me yesterday, I would have been guilty, but today I didn't do anything, kind of thing. So it walking in and finding the three elders there, I was just blindsided. I was pissed. Um, so whatever was going through my mind at the time when I saw those elders there, that was out for me. That was it. And unfortunately, my mother said, "Live in this house, live by these rules for the last time." I went in and packed a duffel bag of clothes and left. And I went and stayed with a friend of mine for a couple of days. And, and I had a job. So, I ended up getting a terrible, crappy little apartment. And, of course, having no social skills or, education or, you know, even the woman I worked for was very unhappy to find out that I was 17 years old and on my own. And so she made tough life hard. So I ended up cowering back, but I wanted to get out. And so I married the first guy that would have me, kind of thing. Like I said, he was a weak brother, and but we got married, and it was a very bad marriage, and it's over. When I say these things, it's regarding the marriage. I was able to divorce mentally this relationship long before I was able to divorce the witness relationship, the organizational relationship. But he was an abusive husband, and he psychologically, physically, there was a lot of stuff that went on. But like I said, I'm over it. It's not. It's now just part of my history. There's no pain that goes with it at all. But I couldn't. I wasn't going to take it. I was with him for 5 years, and I'd had enough. And when I left him, there's a whole other story that goes long around that, because I had a child, and just a whole other story that I'm not going to get into here. But I ended up moving. Like I said, I moved to Texas, and basically I needed help with my daughter. There was a custody battle going on, and I needed help. He had his entire family on his side, and I had nobody on my side. I had to sell my car in order to pay for the attorney fees, and I had nobody. So I ended up losing. And this was where, my parents said, "Well, you made your bed. You lie in it. You need to stay with them. Getting a divorce is not an option, blah, blah, blah." Crap. And then they didn't want to hear about any of the abuse. They didn't want to hear about any of that stuff. And so when I ended up losing everything, I was done. I moved to Texas. And like I said, that's where my life went in the toilet. I started drinking, and I drank like Armageddon was tomorrow, and I was going to forget about it. And I was 28 when I started pulling myself up. And very grateful for that. because I ended up getting her back once I got back on my feet. You know, sobering up and all that kind of stuff. There's a great support system for that as well, and they were extremely helpful. And they ended up becoming a new family for me, and they ended up helping me get all the check marks done and get all the check marks in line so that I could go after her and get her back. And I ended up getting her back, and she's now back out in California, but she's 26 years old now. So, but that was my experience with the Judicial Committee. That was my experience with the pain of how they can be so unfair. And again, J.W. Fairytale makes a great point. If it didn't happen to me, it doesn't happen in the organization. Well, I'm telling you, my particular case with being an unbaptized publisher and being announced and all that, and on all that stuff for the conditions that I was, may be unusual. But the treatment, the unfair treatment for questions or having your own opinion or having your own decisions or anything like that, that is not uncommon. That is very common. So just because it doesn't happen to you doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And, for those of you that are in the organization and rolling your eyes and thinking whatever you're thinking, you also have to consider, too, that you never talk to apostates. You've already prejudged apostates before you listen to them, so that we're all a bunch of liars. But if we're all telling the same story or similar stories, we all have our own personal experiences on it, but the core story is all the same. It's a pretty big conspiracy going on, I have to tell you, if that's what the case is. So before you prejudge us, and before you go, well, I've never heard of that happening, listen to us. We are not telling you this stuff just to get you to join us. We're not telling you this stuff so that we can get followers. We're telling you this stuff so we can try and help you. We're not trying to create a cult. We're trying to get you out of a cult. And I know there's a lot of people that disagree whether or not this is a cult or not, but I'm telling you, you do some research and some study on mind control, and you will come to the conclusion that this is a cult. I too, up until just a few weeks ago, would have denied it was a cult myself. But I've learned about mind control. There was one I read where it had a 12-point checklist. And I'm going through going, check, check, oh my God, oh my God. And the next paragraph after the 12th point was, rarely will you ever see all 12. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, all 12. My head exploded. And that was where I really started to research and study. And we're trying to help you. And Jonestown is kind of my little comparison. It's like, yes, they were in a compound, and yes, they were isolated, and yes, they were a small group, and yes, they were that, but it is no different. Jim Jones killed those people. Whether they took the poison themselves, they were not in control of their mind. He's responsible for all of their deaths. How many people have died in the Jehovah's Witnesses standing up for them? Denying blood, denying this. It's the same. We're trying to help you. And I didn't mean to get on another rant, but instead of judging apostates by just calling them apostates and you're all big fat liars, try listening to us. Try putting yourself in our shoes for just a second, just a little bit, rather than condemning us. Try to sympathize with us a little bit and just look at things. Anyway, I'm just rambling. I'm got on my soapbox and I didn't mean to. Anyway, I'm going to end it here, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.